All right. Welcome to another episode of Breaking Bad Careers. You're here with Peter and I in Honolulu. Gotten the chance to actually come see Peter after 3 years of working together in London and then going our own separate ways.
Yes,
Me
yes.
in to New York, Peter to San Diego, and then now Honolulu. And since we launched your career strategy, we haven't had the chance to really spend time together. So, really excited today to be together here in Honolulu and welcome two amazing guests as we discuss what it means to build community and leverage community to take your career to the next level. So, real quick, I'm Eli Beaumont. I'm an international career coach. I've had 5 careers so far, all successful, but now I've really found my calling. And my career has taken me all over the world and supported tens of thousands of individuals.
And thanks, Eli. And I'm Peter Hill, and international career coach. I've been doing this line of work for a little over 20 years, literally around the world as well. Clients across over 100 countries and more than 10,000 people supported. So I was thinking about like the four of us here today and how much cumulative experience we have. And I think our viewers today are going to gain a lot of value from this.
And my career has taken.
So that's a bit about myself. Let's toss it over to maybe Albert, or let's do Emily first. So Emily, if you just a quick self-introduction, and then we'll go over to Albert.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm so excited to be here on Breaking Bad Careers because I love the show Breaking Bad and I love careers. So it's all come together in fruition. So I'm Emily Liu. I am a career coach at Cultivate, which is a play on words for cultivate your life. And my specialty is helping job seekers make career transitions without necessarily applying online. And even if they don't fully believe they know where they want to go or if it's possible.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emily. And how about yourself, Albert?
Hi, my name is Albert, and I too, like Emily, really love Breaking Bad. In fact, it's one of the shows that I binge watched back in 2014 when I was in between jobs, and it gave me some ideas that obviously I hope to never capitalize on. But I thought that it was a really interesting show, and I really enjoyed the character development, and so it's really cool to be on this show. My name is Albert Chen. I'm founder of Albert's List. We're a job search utility connecting 45,000 people in the Bay Area and beyond, including recruiters, job seekers, hiring managers, and career coaches. People in our community have been hired at all sorts of tech companies you've heard of, including Google, Cisco, Twitter, Salesforce, and much more. And we help answer questions and connect people so that they can have positive career outcomes.
Perfect. That is so cool. So much impact, so many lives touched through all of the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And Albert, that's absolutely wonderful. So, you've both been very intentional about building your communities of champions and others. So tell us about yourselves and why you decided to build your communities. What was the catalyst?
Do you want to start?
I can go to either.
Sure. I'll go first. Yeah. So I'm a recession. I graduated during the last recession, the Great Recession, as we call it, back in 2010. And that was really the tail end of it. And at that point, it was really, really hard to find a job for new graduates because we were competing with senior level professionals who were willing to take far less pay. And, of course, a lot of us who go to school, we do set foot in our career center, but we never really understand or really learn what it means to interview or navigate your career. And so here I was, new graduate, going all over the place, trying to figure out how to interview, how to get my first job. And while I did end up, having some professional success over time, I also felt like there needed to be some more standard and structure around it. And I was big into networking and connecting friends. The initial iteration of Albert's List was a Google spreadsheet back in 2011, 2012, where I put down the names of like 200 to 300 friends. And whenever somebody wanted to connect to somebody else, I said, here's the spreadsheet. There's an email, there's a phone number, give these people a call and, have at it. And then, as I gained more career success, I noticed that a lot of peers of mine were still continuing to struggle. And in March of 2013, I was deciding between whether I should start a Facebook group or a Facebook page, and it ultimately landed on being a Facebook group because I wanted some level of exclusivity, some level of privacy. And so I went ahead and started that on March 8th of 2013. And so we've been around for 8 years as of now this month, plus a couple of weeks. And it's been a fantastic project. We've been able to connect so many people together. During COVID and even before COVID, we've been doing events, now virtual events, and it's an opportunity for people to meet influencers, an opportunity for people to ask questions, even do mock interviews like we do on Monday night, because everybody needs that help. And, this community has been great for helping people not feel isolated during their job search. You're already feeling isolated in normal times in your job search. When you're double isolated during a pandemic and trying to figure out what it is that you want to do next for your career, it can be a pretty terrible feeling. And so that's kind of the origin of where everything for me started.
Wow. That's a pretty cool story, and very kind of you to share a spreadsheet directly with 200 names for individuals to reach out directly. That's cool. It's cool. Yeah. Quite the evolution. What about yourself, Emily?
Yeah, so I feel that in every step of my career, I really was able to either land jobs or to grow in my jobs based around community. So very much like Albert, I feel that when I was in college, I didn't really take advantage of the Career Center, but being thrown out into also graduating during the recession in 2009, it was really hard navigating the whole job search all alone. And so as I started going through my career, I realized that the best way to get to where you want to be is just by finding people that have similar interests as you. And there's that really famous saying, you're the culmination or the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself most with. And so in every single role that I've went into or what I was curious about, I started to find those rooms of people. And I think right now it's really interesting because we are experiencing COVID, right? Like all of the events are shut down. Oh, sorry, hear it echo. Okay, sorry. Basically, before COVID, actually, the reason why I started the Facebook group, Cultivate Your Career, which is a group of almost 10,000 professionals, is because I actually didn't know where to go online to find one. And I always believe, like, if you want to find your tribe of people and you don't see it, you can try to create it, right? So I just kind of threw it up as a way to get like-minded professionals to come together, to share their wins, to share their challenges, to share their struggles. And I've seen that help as a job seeker. And also in my programs that I have for career coaching, I love the group aspect because what I've seen is that people can really thrive off of other people's energies. If somebody is struggling with something, it helps another person because they can relate or resonate. And likewise, when somebody is sharing a win, it can really inspire them or motivate them or open up these different paths. So community is really a cornerstone that I've seen for job seeking as well as a professional, as well as a business owner.
So you both kind of alluded to, you mentioned the word community several times. As career coaches, I think all of us talk about the idea of networking and the importance of leveraging our network of trusting relationships and whatnot. But I'm curious about each of your definitions of community. How would you define it? Maybe Emily, how about you first?
Yeah, so to me, community is just finding that group of people to support you. And it's okay if it's like one person, it's okay if it's 10, it's okay if it's 100 or 1,000, but it's really just a safe space where you know that you can just bring your challenges and your wins and you're going to be supported no matter what, right? Like people can champion you or they can challenge you. And it's just a really great place because as I'm talking specifically with careers, like you need to have people in kind of like your board of directors, if you will, or have like a team to champion and ally with you in order to get to where you want to be.
I love that you talk about a community not having to be tens of thousands of people as well. And like you said, if you surround yourself with about 2, 3, 4, 5 people who just genuinely understand you, care about you, that in itself is such an amazing support system. And I think that's a really cool differentiator where most people are thinking community as like this very large group, which is also really good in increasing reach. But I really love that piece of your definition. Albert, how about yourself?
Yeah, the thing that stood out for me as I heard Emily talk about her definition of careers, and yeah, I'd like to just piggyback off her definition because it's pretty much what I said, what I would say, but rather that I agree with the whole idea of the concept of having your own personal board of directors, right? We're all in control of our careers. We're all the CEOs of what it is that we do, and so whether it is having a community of 5 people who hold you accountable, or 45,000 if you want to come into a community like Albert's List and share your ideas, look for jobs. At the end of the day, it all has that supportive framework to it, because the whole idea is to find like-minded people or find people who can help you find solutions to solutions to issues and challenges when it comes to your job hunt. So totally vibing with that definition.
So Albert, you just mentioned this idea of having a board of directors, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
45,000 is probably a bit large for a board.
Yes, it is.
So if you were, say, speaking to, we'll just say the average individual out there who's managing their career, right? They're on maybe their typical corporate track. How would you suggest someone go about kind of building that, relatively intimate board? Maybe it's 4 people, maybe it's 5. I don't know what the optimum number is. Maybe some suggestions from you about how to go about building that and what types of individuals you might surround yourself with.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a fixed number. You could have 5, you could have 10, as long as it's a manageable number of people that you can keep in touch with on a regular basis. And so when it comes to building that board of directors, I think number 1, it's important to understand what your goals are and what it is that you'd like to achieve. Number 2, I think it's important to understand who your audience is and be able to have that audience that understands that you have similar goals to them, or they are in a place there where you want to be and they can help you grow towards that. And then I think the third piece is being able to really get yourself in that growth mindset, right? So it's audience, it's knowing yourself, and then it's knowing yourself in terms of growth and being able to be in that right mindset, be in that right personality, so that when somebody does mentor you, or when those moments come up where those mentoring moments occur, that you can ask the right questions, because it's all about like context when you have the people around you in your life. If you're just meeting people just to meet people, which you can do in any social network, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, my group, etc., you're gonna just go and get pulled in whatever direction you get pulled in. But like the way we find our jobs and like the way that we navigate our careers, the more direction you have and the more clarity you have in what it is that you want to do, the more specific your board of directors will be, and the better your results will be.
Perfect. And Emily, I can see you nodding your head, so I'm guessing you also have your own either formal or informal intimate board that supports you along your entrepreneurial journey. But maybe you could speak a bit to how you've developed your network.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Albert just shared. And I would say that when it comes to finding your board of directors, it's about a relationship that's built over time. And so for those of you who are looking at either pivoting into a new career, which I know a lot of you guys are going for different career paths or industries, or you want to work for a specific organization, but you're thinking, I don't have all the skills. I don't know anybody in this industry or network. It's really about starting to plant those roots today and getting very intentional on, well, who do you want on your board of directors? Because again, everything starts with just an action. And so if for instance, like I would love to work in the tech industry. One thing that I would recommend is finding that group or that space of tech people. So, there's really great organizations out there like Ladies in Tech. If you identify as a lady, there's, tech tech clubs like all over the internet. I don't know the exact names, but you can find those people. And then I always tell people not to discount the power of LinkedIn, because you can really start to filter, I really admire this person's trajectory. I admire their background. How can I start to like plant that seed of just trying to have this conversation? And again, it's all about starting to build it. And you can have a different board of directors throughout your seasons, depending on what it is that your needs are. And just know that you can always add people. So again, I think this is really where awareness comes into play, and having that clarity and that intention that Albert just mentioned.
Yeah, the self-awareness piece is so big. I every time I give a presentation, every time I talk about it, I somehow sneak in self-awareness, even though I might not have intended to do so. And as I've given these presentations over the years, it just becomes painfully aware and even self-aware to that effect, that if you don't know what you want, anywhere will take you. But if you do know where you want to go, then you ultimately have at least some direction, even if you end up somewhere slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, for anyone just joining us, this is Breaking Bad Careers, and we're live with Emily Liu from Cultivite and Albert from Albert's List. And if you've been joining us and you like what Albert and Emily have to say, why don't you throw some hearts their way? Give them some love through the platform.
I just excited Neha, Yesenia, Gustav, and whoever else is watching. Welcome.
Yes. We're getting a lot of love across all the platforms.
And thank you for taking time out of what I know is probably maybe a busy work day, especially even for those of you job seekers who, have taken time out of applying for jobs, writing those long cover letters to listen to us.
Heck yeah. Well, that's great. So we were just on the topic of how to really leverage community in your careers and really build this board of directors or this group of individuals you could lean on to support you when either moving in the direction of entrepreneurship or even trying to find your next role. So we'd like to ask, how much time would you suggest someone spends cultivating their networks? Maybe if they're happily employed, if they're currently in a job search, or maybe they're an entrepreneur. What have you seen work? Are time frames consistent? Do they vary? In your experience, what would be your recommendations? Maybe we'll start with you, Albert.
Yeah, so I'd say networking is like going to the gym and working out, or working out from home, since we're all working remotely these days. That it's something that you need to do on a consistent basis. I have it personally, on my goal every single month to reach out to at least 5 new people that work within my industry, whether it's my day job as a content strategist or whether it's what I do for Albert's List, and looking for new contacts. If you're just starting out, I think it definitely takes a lot more startup time, because you need to know who it is your audience is, and you have to go out and you have to reach out to them with messaging. Thankfully, I'm later on in my career where sometimes a lot of these contacts come to me, and even though I'm like thinking, I need to reach out to 5 people this week or 5 people this month, the 5 just kind of drop in my lap, which is wonderful. I know not everybody has that kind of benefit, so it does come down to, spending time in the right audiences. And that involves going to the right places like a meetup group, Eventbrite events where you can sign up for a webinar and meet other people, or even in the comments section of a chat like this, where maybe you see somebody over LinkedIn who has a job title that you want to speak to, and you reach out for that initial conversation. You may not hit it 100% of the time, but at least if you're trying, you're going to end up building your network. And when we go back to live events, because I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to see each other face to face, going to those events as well that are very specific, that are very in particular with your career, and then having that conversation, and then learning the art of follow up, and having 20-minute conversations, or half hour to 45-minute coffee conversations, if those still remain a thing, to get to know people. And really be curious and really ask those questions, because professionals enjoy talking about themselves, and they enjoy sharing themselves. And so, being able to do all that and doing all of that consistently is going to help you build your network and build that board of directors that hopefully everybody is seeking.
I have a ton of follow-up questions for you, Albert, but before I get to those, Emily, how about you as a career coach? What type of advice do you give to your clients regarding let's say they're happily employed and they're not really in an active job search versus somebody who is in an active job search? Do you give different advice for different populations?
So what I would love to have every job seeker do is track their time, because I can talk to so many job seekers and every one of them seems to be obsessed over their resume and their cover letter. And that's where they are probably spending 80 to 90% of the time, when what they should actually be doing is exactly what Albert shared, really spending their time, the 80 to 90% within their networking. That being said, when I work with my job seekers, I always have them put the legwork up front and building a really strong foundation. So first is getting clarity, and then it's tweaking your resume and your LinkedIn profile so that you can speak towards that. But once you have that polished, you should be spending very minimal time like tweaking and customizing it. If you're like sitting there for hours on end to the point where you even miss like applying to the job because you're just like obsessed over like what is written or not written on there, you're spending too much time in the wrong area. So once you have a solid foundation, I would really recommend doing those things that Albert just shared and starting to connect and having conversations, because it's through the conversations that the job will yield, not necessarily, a piece of paper that you're just trying to apply and put in front of people. So when I think about job searching, I would recommend, again, 80% in the spending on networking. And then one thing that I like to do, so Albert mentioned like 5 people a month is his target. I like to do like a 2x2. So I try to activate 2 new people, and I try to reach out to 2 older people in my network that I haven't really connected with in the past 3 to 6 months. But I'm a big proponent of starting small and building tiny habits until you can feel really comfortable and confident, and then you can easily scale up from there. So if you're somebody listening right now that's like, I hate networking, just start with one. Do it one by one. I'm going to reach out to one new person, and I'm going to reach out to one old colleague that I haven't talked to in maybe 3 years or 2 years or 1 year. It doesn't matter. It's just about getting into that practice and building that confidence. And then as you build that, you can again start to have bigger goals like Albert, where it's like, okay, I want to do 5 or maybe even 10. But I also want to emphasize it's really not about the quantity. It really becomes about quality and just making sure that who you're reaching out to, again, goes back to intentional and genuine, authentic relationship building. You aren't just messaging someone for the sake of messaging them, but you truly want them as a friend. And I think that's the biggest thing in community building is, yes, there might be jobs that come from it. There might be opportunity or business opportunity, speaking engagements that come from these results. But ultimately, you want to just kind of look at it from a friendship perspective. And I'll share that I have just today somebody who told me that they landed their dream job because they actually forwarded a job description to somebody else that they met at a previous networking event last year, basically saying like, hey, this job description popped up in my inbox. It's not a good fit for me, but it sounds ideal for you. And that person ended up getting the job, and they were hiring on their team and was like, hey, do you want to join our team? And that's how they ultimately ended up getting the job. But again, it came from a space of just being very genuine and wanting to lead with value and helping another person.
Yeah, that's straight fire right there. I really love that. And I think the other piece to make it easier on people who do want to network, just to add to that, is find points of common connection that exist. You don't need to be going out onto LinkedIn and looking for somebody in your career field who you are a 3rd degree connection with. 2nd degree connections work perfectly, or even just common contacts, common context. So, if you're watching on LinkedIn or you're watching anywhere, you've likely gone to university with thousands of other people. You've likely gone to high school with lots of people, if they still list high schools on LinkedIn these days. You might have just mutual friends in general if you meet people over Facebook. All of us are in Facebook groups these days, or we live in a city, we live in a common neighborhood. And all of these are conversation starters where you don't have to start with saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, what's your name? But rather, saying something like, hey, I noticed you went to high school here, I went here too. Did you have this similar teacher together? And I'd love to talk to you more about, what it is that you're doing with your career. And, those conversation starters create this level of comfort that warmed people up. So instead of having that cold pitch to start out with that all of us hate, right? We all hate it when somebody sends us a really random LinkedIn request. And I get tens of these every single day that I just kind of ignore at this point. But, everybody hates it when people are being reached out to cold, where it's like, hi, I met you and you seem like a like-minded professional. That doesn't mean anything to me. But what does mean something to me is like saying, I went to Santa Clara University. So if you tell me that we went to Santa Clara University together and, you enjoyed your time there and I know I enjoyed my time there, that's going to create the first initial 5 minutes that warms me up to you. And then when you make that ask towards the end of that conversation where you want that job referral or where you want that piece of advice, heck yeah, I'm going to give it to you because we have that common bond and we have that common connection.
So you've just talked a bit about how to initiate the conversation, right? How would you suggest continuing to add value to a relationship, right? Let's say that you've reached out to somebody, maybe you've had one call with somebody, it was your first conversation with them, and you genuinely want to nurture this relationship. You feel like there's some mutual value, right? What are some suggestions or tips that you could give to our viewers that could help them to nurture and build these relationships, as well as with the general intention to also grow our networks, right? Mm-hmm. If we're only having the same conversation with the same people, our network's not growing, right? So
I'd love to take this one because
go for it.
Shout out to Eli. I'm going to use Eli as an example because we actually met through LinkedIn. He was bold enough to reach out to me with a very customized message. And it was like such an impressive message that I put it inside. I already shared this with Eli, so I got permission, but I put it inside of my networking module as an example. And what he did so well was exactly the opposite of what Albert just shared in terms of, hey, I just want to reach out because we're like-minded coaches. I could tell really did some research on me and it just felt so personalized and custom. So when we jumped on a phone call, and by the way, his message had a very clear call to action. So we jumped on a phone call. I remember in that phone call, the way that he ended the conversation was, I'd love to hear what your top 3 goals are, or what is it that you need help with or support around. And I was able to kind of just share what came up on my mind, either personally and professionally. And he was able to give me really great resources. He actually followed up afterwards and was like, I thought about this. Here's another thing for you to check out. And I just remember walking away thinking wow, Eli is so intentional and he sounds like a really great person who wants to genuinely help. And naturally, I want to reciprocate, right? How can I help you in return? So I just wanted to shout out to Eli because it's just something that I felt was very genuine, but also moving the needle in the direction of hey, I want to really create a partnership and try to elevate each other.
Well, if I could give you a hug, I would. Instead, I'll just give Peter a hug and pretend it's Emily. That was what, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that.
It might have been 2 or 3 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago? Okay, yeah, maybe I'm extending the timeline, but it was still, and then over time we continue to meet, speak, network, share. You've referred clients over to me. I've sent people your way. We've gotten feedback on you on how to utilize Facebook marketing and different other approaches to growing our coaching business. And the relationships just kind of flourished all from a place of wanting to give and to help and to support. And, at the end of the day, I think that's actually one of the most important things that you can do is remember that your intention needs to be pure when you're going into these conversations with others. Yeah. It's not, what can I get from them? How can I manipulate them? How can I use them? How can I say the right thing that they want to hear to get what I want? It really needs to come from a pure place of, hey, this person seems really genuinely cool. I want to learn from them.
Yes.
I am curious about them. I am going to ask good questions to really get to know who they are and how they ended up where they are. And through that curiosity and openness, people can feel it. They can feel your energy. So, if you're nervous, if you're scared, people feel that. You put off a vibe. Take a deep breath, relax, go in with a pure intention, just be curious, ask good questions, and let it flow from there. So
Yes. And I want to just add to that because I feel like a lot of job seekers, they say things like, well, I feel kind of bad because I just want like to use them as a referral. And I'm like, okay, well, that's where you're going wrong, right? Like you're making it more about you than what the truth is, or like how you genuinely want to connect with another person. Like you need to find that commonality first before you get the job. And I always say like the job follows. I also want to share, I recently hired a resume writer to join my team. And what she did really well is she actually wrote like a LinkedIn post or article, and she was writing like resume tips. And then she actually cited me from, her research that she's done. She kind of pulled a quote that I have said before about resumes and incorporated it into the article. And then she posted that LinkedIn article and status update and tagged me in it. And then that's when I was like, oh, wow, like, who is Ali? Let me check her out. And we actually just jumped on a conversation, and it turned out she was looking for resume writing jobs. I needed a resume writer, and that match was made in heaven. So again, it wasn't like she reached out and said, hey, can you refer me into your company, or are you hiring? She actually just went above and beyond and just led with value. And then again, the job came as a result.
Cool. So we just got a question come in, and thanks, Miguel, for throwing your question in here. The question is, how do you define what working in tech is? But I think this also lends itself to a broader question that Albert actually alluded to, and that's the idea of having clarity on what it is that your career intention, your career trajectory, right? If you're in career change, if you're looking for a job, or if you're thinking about a pivot in your career, right? Eli and I certainly have a viewpoint on what we actually have 3 pillars of a career trajectory, which we can certainly talk about. But I wanted to toss it over to you guys because Miguel's question does open up an important question about tech. What does tech mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be an industry, or it could be a functional area, or for that matter, it could be a location, because we all know Silicon Valley is a tech hub, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you could speak a bit more to how you define career clarity or career trajectory, and how it could, how having clarity around it just facilitates the community building.
Yeah, when I think about working in tech, I do think about working in the technology industry specifically. And I don't normally think about it in terms of like a job function or a hub necessarily, because Silicon Valley, as we've seen during the pandemic here, has become so it's kind of this whole entire idea instead of a physical place now, right? Because you're working from Hawaii literally here, and the two of us here are both in our own home offices. Whereas, a decade or so ago, we might have had to have flown all to one central location to make this kind of webinar happen. And we wouldn't be able to do it live either, because those kinds of things didn't exist back then. And so when I think of tech as a career trajectory, it's being able to make your way into an industry. We see a lot of coaches these days who pitch themselves as coaches who help you get into the high-tech field. And that can be doing anything from being a software developer to a data scientist to somebody working in a supporting function such as marketing, administrative assistant, financial analyst, and what have you. And the reason why there's sort of this career trajectory to that point is because there's a certain mindset and way, I think, that a lot of folks have discussed when it comes to working in tech. I personally have worked in tech since my entire career began 11 years ago, so I probably don't understand it as much as the people who are struggling to get in. But to my understanding, it's the understanding that it's the kind of technologies that exist out there. So software as a service, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, artificial realities, all of those kinds of things are very much in the realm of tech. And to understand what all those to understand and break your way in, it's to understand why each of these technologies are so important and so key to the advancement of society, whether it's a really simple app to something that's used by enterprise companies in the B2B space to pretty much everything in between it. And so it's that mindset, it's that thought process, it's being able to think strategically in terms of, why is the cloud something that we need right now? What differentiates it from having a piece of hardware that sits right next to you that people have been using for the last 35 years? And so when it comes down to tech, that's kind of how I approach it. I want to hear what you have to say about this too, Emily.
Wow, you gave such an in-depth, like Wikipedia definition. I don't know if I could add any more to that, but I think when it comes to the clarity piece and just really trying to understand again where you're headed, I hear from a lot of job seekers that they don't know exactly what it is that they want. They are kind of fuzzy and they are really general or broad about, I want to join tech, but again, to Albert's point, there's so much under that umbrella. I think one important thing that you can do as an action step is trying to clarify, like, what is the impact? Because I feel like a lot of these companies are very mission driven and mission based. And generally, if you want to join one of these companies, you want to be aligned with their mission and their vision. So understanding like what that mission or impact is could be really helpful. That being said, I also want to share, like, sometimes you're in a point in your career where you don't have like this grand mission. Maybe your mission or your vision is just, I want to support and provide for my family, or I want to just enjoy like helping another company build something as long as it's doing good for the planet. It's really up to you. And that just goes back to the clarity piece. What is it that you want? And then what I would recommend is starting to just put out feelers. Hey, your background looks interesting. And one of the questions you can ask is, I'm curious, like, what groups or professional organizations are you a part of? Or do you have like any recommendations of where I can learn more about XYZ? And as you start to get more in depth in your research and your conversations, it's always going to lead you to another action step. And through the action is when the clarity will come out even more.
Yeah. That's brilliant. A brilliant way to start working towards clarity. And I think clarity, like you said, develops over time. It's going to shift based on your values, your vision, your interests, where you're at every stage of your life. So,
and I want to add another piece to that. I think the other final piece to clarity is also taking on what I like to call this mindset of ownership. This founder mentality, whether you're looking at a startup or whether you're looking at yourself. A lot of times, right, we go into the job search with this whole victim mindset that something happened to me. But one thing that, I try to always, whether it's in my own job search or whether it's looking at other people's job searches, is trying to understand what can happen for me instead. And so when we take that level of ownership, when we are understanding of where we are in our life, whether, you have 10 to 15 years of experience or you literally graduated from college yesterday and you're looking for that first job, the information you own about the industry you want to work in, your own strengths and weaknesses, what it is that you're looking to do in life is also going to help you get there to the next level. And, these things aren't easy because I know I spent the first at least 5 years of my career just kind of bouncing around from job to job and literally telling interviewers that I was sitting there in that interview because I needed something that wasn't a contract and that I wanted a job. And, that's not the best answer to give. But if you're at least honest about it and maybe you can, spin it into something that ties back to your why and to why the industry that you want to work in is important, then, at least you have yourself a fighting chance.
Yeah, and I love what Eli shared earlier about like everything is kind of like a season, and it's important for you to dial back in and ask yourself, like, is what I had in mind, like that vision, still important to me today? Because so many things in our lives change. As we saw in the year of 2020, I think it forced a lot of us to re-examine things, and it's really important to just understand like why we're doing what we're doing. And I feel, not to like, I know Simon Sinek or Cynic has start with why, but that really is like the answer to a lot of our questions.
100%. And, as career coaches ourselves, we are the first ones to advocate to anyone to at least every couple, 2 or 3 years, to go ahead and go back and look in that mirror and take stock of that why and our other career motivators, right? Mm-hmm. So good stuff. So, like to pivot back to this idea of community, right? And the question I have for you right now is, if you could give advice to your younger self, right?
I have a lot of advice for my younger self. Where do you want me to begin?
Where do we start? How long is this live stream?
Yeah, 1 hour.
If a younger version of me showed up on Albert's list today, I would have a lot of words for him. A lot of words. Let's go with that.
Okay, so I'll qualify it and make it a little bit easier. um, so your advice to your younger self with regards to understanding the benefits and the dynamics of building community and tapping into networks. When I was younger, I certainly didn't fully understand the importance of having a board of directors, of attending events, either live in person or nowadays virtually, and understanding how to leverage the events and understanding that the event in and of itself is not really networking. It's, that's a starting point, right? So yeah, advice to your younger selves about the dynamics and the benefits of building community.
Well, I think if that's the specific context, the piece of advice that I would tell 22-year-old Albert is that it's definitely not about you, and it'll never be about you. And you got to quit that attitude right now, thinking that it is, because when you go into work, right, it's not. I grew up with this mentality and going into college and coming out of college thinking that, yeah, I'm gonna find a job and someone's gonna pay me for it, and I'm gonna have money, and then after I'm done with my 9 to 5, that's gonna be that. The fortunate bit about it is that in life, you're hired because of the value and the insights you bring, and you're paid for your experience, and you're paid for what you know, and your capability of being able to show up in a way that will continue that whole entire process going forward and into the future. And so, a lot of us job seekers, especially, for the folks who are a lot younger, go into their job searches often thinking that they need to get stuff from other people. When in reality, the truth is that even though your only experience has been sitting in a classroom, passing your midterms, and getting really good grades, there's something to be gained from those grades. There's insights to be gained. There's new ideas, right? We're all desperate for these fresh new ideas, especially the deeper into corporate you get, because it's the same processes over and over and over again. And so so going back to it all, if you are wondering, what you can do for yourself, it's knowing that it's not about you, that if you can find some way to give, whether it's your time, your thoughts, your energy, your insights, even just your excitement for a particular industry, that's going to change it all.
May I, just before Emily, you answer, Albert, what would your 22-year-olds have taken that advice, or would you have said that, shut up? I know what I'm doing. Thanks, older Albert.
Oh, well, he would have definitely been a rebel. He would have thought he knew exactly what was going on with his life, because 22-year-old Albert didn't think that he would, have a 45,000 person Facebook group at age 33, much less be in the career that he's currently in. He was ready to basically settle down and work someplace for 40 years, clock in, clock out, and somehow make it to retirement. I have no idea at 33 years old why 22-year-old Albert could even fathom to think like that, but I'm glad that it didn't end up that way.
It's human nature. It is human nature. We think we know everything when we're younger, and for anyone who's early in their career listening to this right now, it's try not to be your own worst enemy. We might not even know we're getting in our own way, and it's tough to take advice from people that you love, your parents, teachers, mentors even. They're going to come to you with tips and advice, and it's like, hey, when I was in your shoes, and you'd be like, yeah, but I'm not you, I'm different, I know better. And at the end of the day, take in the information, try to get out of your own way and make it happen, and you're going to find that things will start flourishing. But Emily, I'd love to kind of hear your advice now on young Emily.
Oh my gosh, 22-year-old me. I used to be I say used to, and I'm still a little bit introverted. Like, I was very, very shy growing up. And I also had a lot of insecurities about what is my value? What do I have to offer? But I remember my first job outside of college was really in sales. And I was a recruiter, a agency recruiter. So a large part of my job was networking, and I had no idea what I was being thrown into. It was so out of my comfort zone. I just remember going to all of these networking events and getting business cards back with people who had titles like VP or senior SVP, and I just always felt like, what do I have to offer this person? Oh no. And I'm sure like a lot of job seekers feel this way too. You might be thinking, well, I'm unemployed right now. Like, what can I possibly give of value? And I guess what I wish I told myself back then is that just reminding myself that everybody is human and we all crave connection. And at the end of the day, we're all just here to like help each other. And if I had told myself that, I feel like I would have been able to kind of put the playing field a bit more even instead of putting people on pedestals. And again, just like lead with more of an authentic personality and just be myself and ask like, what can I help and support you with? Because I do agree that right now, like even if you don't have like all of the experience, you're not like the expert, you're not the consultant to this person. One thing that you do have to give is time, compliments and acknowledgments. I feel like, especially in the corporate world, like we don't get enough acknowledgments and appreciations. And so, just the little things that you can help another person with, if you can lead with that, then I feel that you'll start to get more comfortable and confident in your own skin, and just know that it's okay to ask for help. That's another thing that I needed to learn, because I came with this upbringing that if you ask for help, it's a sign of weakness. If you want to get something done, like you need to prove it and like obtain it yourself. But I later realized like you can't get to where you want to be in your career if you don't have people supporting and helping you. And if you do, like it's going to take much longer to get there.
Yeah, I think, let's just, you and I are both Asians, and, that's very much within that core Asian like mindset where asking for help is a sign of weakness. Being somebody who needs help is somehow a burden to everyone. And, for all of my minority watchers who, are Asian, Latino, etc. on this, know that you're not a burden when you're asking for help. Know that you're not being someone who is taking up too much time or take up space. Those are things that you absolutely need to do, because that's how you get the attention, so that people will take care of you. They'll help you get where you need to go. And the people who do speak up and who do have a voice are going to be the ones who are a lot more successful.
Oh, that is powerful stuff. I got like the
Chicken
chills.
skin.
Yeah, I got my eyes are rolling up. It's so important, and really, it comes from a place of confidence. It comes from a place of your belief systems based on how you grew up, where you came from. I'm also a child of immigrant family, Middle East, which is technically Asia, but
it's like you're Asian just like us.
Yeah, it's a different part, but it's difficult. It's very difficult to ask for help. And again, it's this concept of getting out of your own way and knowing that if you put the shoe on the other foot and someone comes to you and they say, hey, I'm feeling a little uncertain, I'm not sure how to go about this, would you be willing to just lend me your ear or give me a little bit of support? And if someone said that to you, would you really turn them down? Right?
No, absolutely not. No.
And
I consider it an absolute. Yeah, I consider it an absolute privilege to be a part of someone else's job search, because there are fewer areas in life where one can be so vulnerable as much as they are. Because we, at least in the United States, put so much value into our careers. Like, one of the worst questions you can start by asking, but we ask it anyway at any networking event, is what do you do? I prefer to ask how can I help you, because that's the type of space I prefer to come from. But a lot of us are asking, what do you do? Because it's the safe, easy question to ask. Yeah. And so, it's absolutely imperative that people, speak up and ask for help. And I think the other piece I wanted to add in there was, I also want to take the time to remove the stigma of things like, going and getting mental health help if you're in the middle of struggling in your job search, because a lot of us look at that too. And the way we act in our careers is a lot like in the ways that we act in our personal lives. There's a lot of projection happening, both positive and both negative. And if you need to think about how to overcome barriers from your childhood and early on in your life in order to become a better networker and a better professional, I absolutely encourage it too.
Who's your therapist, Albert? Do you have a recommendation?
I was working with a therapist. She ended up doing something else in her life, but it was actually really fantastic because before becoming a therapist, she was a product marketing manager at Facebook and Pinterest. And so not only was she able to help me overcome a lot of the things that I was going through, she also understood my career. I could talk within my sessions about what it is that I did at work every day, and she would catch on to it immediately. And I didn't have to explain, what a marketing campaign was because she's already done it in her life. It's I wish we could have more therapists who also have occupational training in the careers that their clients do. But anyone who you meet who can listen to you and understand what it is that you're going through is going to be pretty huge.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You brought up I think a really key point about the job search being a vulnerable space, right? And Eli and I both know, we're building our own community with the Career Strategy series and Breaking Bad Careers. You both each have your own communities. We've seen our community come together to support one another. So we're curious to hear how you've seen your communities band together to support one another, particularly when job seekers are feeling so vulnerable these days.
Mm-hmm.
I can take this one. I have just even today in our private Facebook group, somebody had openly and vulnerably and courageously shared that they're facing a lot of depression to the point where it's really even difficult to, get out of bed, let alone apply online to another job. And so, what's really amazing is that just by them sharing this openly, so many of the other comments came in, right? It's like it takes that one person to lead with, this is what I'm experiencing. And it's like such a cathartic experience because everybody else is like, wow, like I can resonate with that. Thank you so much for sharing what's been on my mind. I didn't know how to put what I've been feeling into words, but seeing that has really helped me get clarity. So I think it's really, really important to know that you're not alone in this journey. And it's very challenging, right? Because sometimes if you're not in a community that has people in the same space as you going through the same exact challenges, it's really hard to have people like to be openly vulnerable and share this to like people who may be doing really well or thriving in their careers. And so, I think it's really important to just kind of have that space. And what I love the most about our community is that people can just openly and vulnerably share and know that it is a very safe space. They can get like either advice or just like affirmation of like an acknowledgement, like, I hear you. Yeah, that sucks. And, it's really powerful just knowing again that other people can empathize with you on this journey.
Yeah, and from our end, I think one of the most heartwarming things is so one of the things that we started on Albert's List about, I would say, a year and a half to 2 years ago was this Google form called Anonymous Asks. This is a way for people to ask their questions anonymously to our community of 45,000 because the Bay Area, despite being millions and millions of people, is actually quite a small place. A lot of people know each other. A lot of professionals know each other, and word gets out if you're talking about very vulnerable, very emotional topics. And we do get a lot of emotional topics. Just last week, for example, we had somebody who posted that they had started a contract job at the same time as their friend, but their friend had been converted to full-time, and they were still on contract, and they were wondering what they needed to do. Another person was saying that they were at a company here in the Bay Area and that they were passed over a promotion, and the promotion was given to their colleague who themselves had said that they had been checked out for at least the past year at work. And so these are really emotional topics. And for one reason or another, these are also the topics that and the types of posts, these anonymous asks, that get the most engagement as well from people. And so it goes to show that, people are willing to give advice. They're willing to offer that advice in some of the most vulnerable spaces because, these are very real everyday topics within the workplace. A lot of us think about, how we go into work, you do the work, and then you leave work, and then you collect a paycheck every 2 weeks. But really, the workplace is so much more complex than that. There's so many relationships to handle. There's so many different processes. Then you have, the business environment changing every single day. And we've seen a lot of people talk about how they had a job offer on the table, and then COVID hit, and then they lost their job, and then they had to look for another 6-7 months. And it's all a very emotional thing, even though for a lot of people, it's bills that they have to pay, it's rent that they have to make. And so that we really try to add in the human element to work, because a skill is just a skill, right? If you're able to code, that's cool. If you're able to write, that's cool. And those are all important things that we talk about, on webinars separate to this. But when it comes to the human element of what goes on in the workplace, I feel like sometimes it goes way, way deeper, because you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with interests, you're dealing with stakeholders who have something that they need to do. Otherwise, they might see their job on the line, and so much more. And so that's what I think adds a different element into the community that I run over here at Albert's List, and really allows people to be supportive of one another.
Awesome. So for all of the viewers who may have joined us in maybe the last 20 minutes or so, we have been streaming live here on LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as YouTube. This is Breaking Bad Careers with Coach Eli and Peter. Our guests have been Albert Chen and Emily Liu. And we've just unpacked a whole bunch of really valuable insights. We've got about 5 minutes left before we wrap up today, and wanted to toss it off to Emily and Albert just to share any final thoughts or top tips that maybe you haven't had a chance to touch on yet. And then once you've shared your final thoughts, just let our viewers know how they can get in touch with you or your community if you'd like to. Maybe Emily, you want to go first?
Yeah, Emily, you go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say that and on the topic of community, if you're not in your community yet, and I say yet because there is one out there for you, I just encourage you, if anything, you don't take anything other than, I need to find a community. Start to just do some searches. Look on Google, type in, whatever it is that you want to aim towards. If you have a specific geographic location, I would definitely type that in as well. And if what you're turning up isn't anything that excites you, see how you can just create one. It doesn't take much to create a Facebook group. It doesn't take much to create a clubhouse, which Albert and Eli and another one of our coaches, Satya, is doing together. But it's really about, what do you envision? Is there one already created? Great. Let's see how I can be a part of that and how to get involved in that. So one of the things that I really recommend is not just showing up. I used to attend, when I was in my early 20s, I used to attend HR groups, and I would go to these events. I would just show up to network. I didn't know how to network back then. And then I would just never follow up or volunteer or immerse myself in that group. So if you can find a group, immerse yourself in it. That's where you're going to really start to allow others to get to know you as much as you get to know them. And again, if you can't find one, create one. And if anybody is interested in joining my Facebook group, there is one for professionals. This one isn't geolocation specific. It's just really about anybody who wants to advance in their careers or is actively job searching. You could just type in "cultivate your career" in the Facebook search bar and go there. Otherwise, I'd love to connect with you here on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Emily. Highly recommend our viewers connect with Emily on LinkedIn, on Facebook, get involved. She has amazing programs as well, so don't be afraid to ask about those too. Albert, how about you? Final tip?
I think my final tip would be to focus, but also be open to the possibilities and opportunities. I think for me, one of the mistakes that I made early on as a new graduate is that I went to literally every single networking event, even though it wasn't necessarily within my field of work. And so I ended up collecting a lot of connections, which didn't necessarily mean much, but they also helped me become a better networker because it allowed me to be curious to meet a lot of new people. Later on in my career, I've met a lot of people specifically, in marketing, and that's as well as within the job search and career space, because those are the two areas that I primarily serve today. But I also try to keep my mind open if someone wants to introduce me into a different circle and a different community of people, because you never know who people know. And so I think that's maybe the biggest lesson out of all that is you never know who people know. And so the next person you meet could be somebody who changes your entire trajectory of your career. And so to be curious, to be interested, to be somebody who shows up with great energy is the absolute first, bit of piece that you do to get yourself to that point. You can find Albert's List on Facebook. We're a Facebook group, so if you search Albert's Job Listings and Referrals, San Francisco Bay Area, that's where you can find us. We also have communities in Southern California, Texas, and New York, as well as the Sacramento Valley area. And so those are regional communities that we have as well to help people with specific interests in those areas. And so feel free to join. We'll let you in, and you can engage with us in conversation.
Powerful stuff from both of you. This has been just an exceptional conversation around community building and how you can really leverage community to enhance your career trajectory. But deeper than that, it's been talking about relationships that you have within yourself and getting clear inside, so that way you have the space to build the right communities, right? And not being afraid to ask for help. So many of us, whether it's due to cultural norms, ways we've been brought up, our existing communities and our systems that we've grown up in, maybe give us different beliefs that make us feel like maybe no one wants to help us, but that's not true. So being okay with asking for help is super important. There's so many takeaways that I think both Peter and I took from this, and certainly our audience here today. So Emily, Albert, we want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join us here on Breaking Bad Careers.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of our community now and introducing us to yours. And we look forward to doing more amazing work together and having a ripple effect on all these amazing job seekers together.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I actually can't wait to meet both of you face to face someday. And I know it will happen. I think
Hawaii, please.
We'll fly to you in Hawaii.
Yeah,
I'll see you in about 8 hours.
Come on over. Yeah, that would be awesome. We can do our next Breaking Bad all live together. That'd be amazing. But anyway, shall we take it away?
That's it.
All right, we're all done. So
take care, everybody. Thank you, and aloha.
Aloha.